Okay, so imagine this. The world is in a water crisis, right? And you listening to this, you have the power to turn salty ocean water, the stuff we swim in, into clean drinking water.
It's true. That's the reality for desalination technicians.
This is exactly why we're doing this deep dive, to like really break down this career that's increasingly important.
And honestly, it's really captivating because it's not just about like pipes and pumps.
Right.
It's about directly facing like a huge human challenge.
Yeah.
How do we get clean water to everyone?
Okay, you got me. I'm hooked. But
Yeah.
let's back up a bit. What does a desalination technician actually like do all day?
Right, right. It's not as easy as pushing a button and poof, you've got like fresh Evian.
I figured
It's
it.
way more complex.
Yeah.
I guess the simplest way to put it is they're kind of like the engineers of, thirst quenching.
I like that. I like
They
that.
work in these massive desalination plants. And these plants are like seriously intricate factories.
Wow.
And they're responsible for, operating and keeping all these crazy complex systems running, the systems that take the salt and the other stuff you don't want to drink out of the water.
So there's a huge element of responsibility here, right?
Right,
We're,
right.
we're talking about producing clean water for like tons of people.
Absolutely, yeah.
What does that actually look like day to day?
So it's not the same thing every day, which is, part of what makes it interesting.
Right.
One day you might be calibrating pumps, making sure they're running right. The next you could be like deep in a membrane system, figuring out why it's not working.
Yeah.
And these plants run 24/7, 365.
Around the clock.
Yeah, so shift work is a reality, nights, weekends, holidays even. And on top of it all, safety is like the biggest thing. These technicians are dealing with potent chemicals, heavy machinery, all kinds of stuff that could be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing.
It's a demanding job, for sure. Now, in the research, I read about these really specific technologies used in desalination, stuff I'd never even heard of. Can you give us an example, maybe something relatable so I can wrap my head around it?
Totally. Have you ever used like a coffee filter?
Who hasn't? Right.
Exactly. So you pour the water through, it grabs the coffee grounds, and you've got your drink. Reverse osmosis, one of the main technologies in desalination. It's basically the same concept, but on a massive scale.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Imagine like forcing seawater through this superfine filter, a membrane, and it catches all the salt molecules but lets the pure water through.
Huh.
Obviously, it's way more complicated than that in reality, but that's the gist.
Wow. I never thought about it like that. That's actually really cool. So these plants are using like giant coffee filters to make drinking water for like whole towns.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's incredible. Speaking of which, we've got to talk about the global need for this
Yeah.
because the research, it painted a pretty intense picture.
Yeah, it's a huge issue. Like the UN, they estimate almost 2 billion people don't have regular access to safe water.
Wow.
That's why this whole thing is so important. Desalination, it's not just some like sci-fi solution anymore. It's becoming the way to deal with water shortages, especially in places that are naturally dry or just don't have a lot of fresh water sources.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like desalination is like not just this niche thing anymore. It's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And because it is such a big deal, the demand is just going up and up,
Yeah.
which is great news if you're thinking about, actually working in the field.
Okay, so what you're saying is job security is looking pretty good.
Definitely. The more people we need making clean water, the more they get paid, the better the benefits.
Yeah.
It's basic economics.
Right, right. And I mean, beyond just the paycheck, what are some of the the perks, the cool things about working as a desalination technician?
Well, first of all, you're working with some really advanced tech. I mean, these desalination plants, they're like the cutting edge.
Yeah.
So you're always learning new stuff, always challenged. Plus, and this is a big one for a lot of people, you're actually like directly making a difference.
Yeah, it's not just a job. It's
It's about helping people, giving them something they really need.
okay, but we got to be real, right? There's got to be some downsides to this job. What about the not so glamorous stuff?
Sure, sure. It's not always pretty. You know what I mean?
Right.
It can be really demanding physically. The environments, they're not always comfortable. Like you might be working with chemicals, loud noises, crazy hours.
Yeah. You mentioned shift work earlier.
Exactly. Nights, weekends, sometimes even holidays if something goes wrong and it can't wait. And it can be high pressure too.
High pressure, like literally with the water pressure and everything.
Oh yeah, that, but also like you mess up, it could be a big problem. You got to stay on top of things.
Right. If the water supply gets messed up, that's like a huge deal. Okay, so for our listeners who are like thinking, this sounds kind of awesome, how do they even get into this field?
Well, a lot of folks, they'll start with an associate's degree.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like water treatment technology. That's a popular one.
Makes sense.
Some people do mechanical engineering, which is broader, but, it's all connected.
Sure.
But honestly, more than the degree, it's the experience that matters.
Really? More than the piece of paper.
Oh, yeah. Employers,
Yeah.
they want to see you've actually gotten your hands dirty, so to speak.
So like internships.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Get yourself into a water treatment plant, a desalination plant, if you can. That's how you really learn.
Okay, that's good advice. So let's say you've done your internship, you've got your degree, you've got your foot in the door. What does the actual, like, career path look like? How do you move up in the desalination world?
Well, typically you'll start as like an entry-level technician.
Right.
You're basically learning the ropes, shadowing more experienced people, doing a lot of the less glamorous tasks.
Paying your dues.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But from there, you can move up to junior technician, where you're starting to get more responsibility, maybe even supervising a small team.
Cool.
And then, you keep learning, keep proving yourself. You become a full-fledged desalination technician. You're calling the shots.
Yeah.
And if you're really ambitious, have that leadership drive, you can go for a senior technician position.
Nice. So there's like a real ladder you can climb. Now, the researchers mentioned that some technicians actually specialize, right? Like they become experts in a specific part of the whole process. What's that all about? So it's kind of like, why be good at everything when you can be amazing at one specific thing?
Totally. Like some people, they get really into the membrane systems, those filters we were talking about.
Right.
They're always like researching new materials, new designs, trying to make them more efficient.
So they're like the membrane gurus.
Exactly. And then you've got others who are all about the energy side of things. Because these plants, they use a ton of power.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So these guys, they're figuring out how to make it more sustainable.
Yeah.
Like, can we use solar? What about wave energy? It's pretty cool stuff.
Wow. So they're not just making water, they're like shaping the future of how it's done.
Exactly.
Now, the research talked about some skills and certifications that are like really important in this field. What should our listeners be, brushing up on if they're thinking about this career?
Well, obviously, you need a good grasp of the basics, like chemistry, mechanics, all that good stuff.
Right.
But honestly, a lot of people underestimate the soft skills.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean?
Like, you got to be able to communicate right. You're working on these complex systems. You got to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it to all kinds of people, other technicians, engineers, even like the higher-ups sometimes.
So it's not just you and the machines. There's actual teamwork involved.
Big time. And then there's problem solving.
Yeah, I bet.
Things go wrong. That's just the reality. So you got to be able to think on your feet, figure out what's going on, come up with solutions. And sometimes you got to do it, like right now.
No pressure. Right. So it's a career that needs like both the brains and the personality.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Are there any specific certifications people should go for, like, that'll make them stand out on a resume?
Oh, for sure. The water treatment operator certification, that's a big one.
Okay.
It basically shows you know what you're talking about. You understand the regulations, all that.
Right, makes sense.
And then there's the OSHA General Industry Safety Certification.
Rocha?
Yeah. Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
Right, right.
That one shows you're serious about safety, which in this line of work is super important.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, the skills, the certifications, but at the end of the day, what's the best part about being a desalination technician? What's that feeling, that makes all the hard work worth it?
Well, for me, it's knowing that you're doing something that truly matters.
Yeah.
You're not just like pushing paper around. You're actually making a difference in people's lives.
Right.
You're helping to solve a global crisis. I mean, that's pretty amazing, right? To be able to say you had a hand in bringing clean water to people who desperately need it.
Absolutely. That's got to be incredibly rewarding. So for our listeners who are now thinking, okay, I'm in, how do I do this thing? Is there a resource you recommend they check out?
We've covered a lot of ground, but like we said, experience is key. And that's where a website like RoleCatcher can really come in handy. They've got tons of resources specifically for desalination technicians. Like you can find sample interview questions, get insights into what employers are looking for, even get feedback on your interview skills, all tailored to this specific field.
Oh, wow. So it's like having a leg up in the whole job hunting process. Very cool. So there you have it. If you're searching for a career that's both in demand and genuinely makes a difference, a career that's on the cutting edge of technology and global importance, then dive into the world of desalination.
Definitely getting bigger.
Exactly. And who knows, you might just find yourself at the forefront of a solution, one glass of clean water at a time.